Today I want to really unpack the major differences between undergrad and grad school. And I want to address, do these differences actually make grad school hard? So if you're somebody who's interested in going to grad school but don't really know what to expect and if you can do it, this video is for you. So I guess the hard-hitting question is grad school harder than undergrad? And I would start off just simply saying yes, but also no. When you're in undergrad, you're basically learning the foundations. Who are the scholars? What is your discipline about? What are the major questions and problems that exist within your discipline? In general, you're learning how scholars became scholars and what they're saying about your course material. And you as an undergrad are learning from the experts and are just getting the foundations. It's kind of like an entry level into the field. When you get to your master's, it starts to look a little bit different. So in undergrad, you're demonstrating command and understanding of the major concepts, themes, techniques, and scholars. In your master's, you already have this foundation and command, and now you're bringing different concepts, discourses, and ideas into conversation with one another. And this is really what your master's thesis is. So you understand the basics of what scholarship and the discipline are talking about. And now you as a scholar is thinking, how can you push that forward with the information that you have? And then what you write for your master's thesis is more of a synthesis of this field, of all these different concepts coming together and producing some sort of new perspective using the same techniques, ideas, and scholars that had already been there. So in this way, you're contributing new knowledge, but only to a certain extent, using the tools and the people who are already out there. Once you get to your PhD, you become one of the scholars, or at least you're working to become one of the scholars. So while you will still be building off of the scholars and techniques and theories that came before you, it is your job in a PhD to add a new perspective or a new approach that has never been done before. Or in other words, it is your job to extend those theories, scholars, and ideas beyond where they're at now. Another major difference between undergrad and grad school is the type of project you're expected to do at the end of your academic career. In undergrad, you get to graduate once you complete the required amount of classes. So as long as you continue to pass all your classes, you know that your graduation is guaranteed. So in a master's and a PhD program, there's actually a few more steps that determine if you can graduate or not, in addition to coursework. So for a master's, you're often required to turn in some type of culminating project at the end. And that can look different. It can be a master's thesis, which is a document that's 30 to 100 pages. It could be a capstone project, which includes more practical or artistic aspects of it. Or it could be a series of syllabi that you would use as an educator to teach classes based off of your field. In a PhD, you're expected to complete your coursework, exams, and turn in a culminating document called a dissertation. And I have a video that talks way more about what is a PhD and what is required to get through a PhD. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out that past video. But in graduate school, you could make straight A's in all your classes. But if you don't pass your exams or the culminating projects, then it is possible that you don't actually get the degree. Now, I don't think that's the experience for everybody, especially if you have good relationships with your advisors. They can help guide you through the process where you can feel confident from beginning to end. But this is just something to be aware of. So what about classes? Well, first starting off, graduate courses have the same exact professors as undergraduate courses. So you can kind of imagine how, in general, across all of the degree programs, that classes are going to be pretty similar. As you probably notice if you're an undergrad, higher division courses generally have smaller classes. And this is pretty true for most PhD and master classes as well. Once you get into grad school, you're no longer going to have to experience 100 to 400 class sizes. Instead, they'll probably be much smaller, ranging from anywhere to as small as 2 students at a time to as big as maybe 35 on the larger end. But what really comes down to the major difference between undergraduate and graduate courses is the workload. In general, you can imagine an undergrad class having maybe 2 papers, 1 midterm, and a final. And none of the papers really would be longer than 8 pages, unless you're in a special research type of course. In grad school, generally, pages are expected to be anywhere from 10 pages minimum to as much as 35 pages maximum. And sometimes if you're in a very specific type of research class that's relevant to your discipline or core class, they can be much longer. And this isn't to scare you off, it's just to say that as you develop these more skills of doing more than just understanding and explaining the field, but synthesizing and contributing your own analysis and contributing your own thoughts, you actually start to naturally fill up more page spaces. So in a way, these assignments become exercises to practice incorporating your own thoughts and expanding on them. So they don't become necessarily harder, though at first they can be very challenging. But as you get used to writing longer papers, it becomes a skill that you become better at. Also, generally, graduate courses are going to require much more reading than an undergraduate course. So in graduate courses, it's not uncommon for you to be expected to read an entire book in a week. And this isn't to intimidate anybody, because even though it's expected, it doesn't mean that you're going to do that every time. And I'm somebody who really doesn't read fast. And I'm actually not a lover of reading in general, and I get distracted really easy. So there's always a way to manage the workload of the classes. If you're interested in my strategies on how I get through my reading workload while in graduate school, definitely leave a comment. But again, my goal isn't to intimidate you by saying that, the writings become really long and the readings become so much and it's just gonna pile up on you and overwhelm you. That's not actually true. As you read and write more, they become less difficult to do. Another important thing that's different from undergrad to graduate school is grading. In undergrad, you have a really large grade range from possibly all the way down from F and D to all the way up to A and A pluses. And all you would need to pass is a D and a C to show command. In graduate school, that's not quite the case. Oftentimes you need to demonstrate at least a B average to be considered in good standing. So technically in graduate school, even though a C is passing, it's not passing enough for you to progress in your program, and so it's technically considered failing. But I will say, again, because the difference between undergrad and graduate school is about skills, you're not really being evaluated on your ability to explain something in the same way you were in your undergrad. In graduate school, it's a little less common to actually get C's because you're not being evaluated on what somebody has said and your understanding of it, but really on your own opinions. And that is predicated on how well you explain yourself versus if you're wrong or right. So in that way, it's a little bit different and a little less cutthroat or looking for a specific end goal. Now, this might be a little bit different if you're in a more technical graduate program like conservation or even engineering, where you have to learn a certain skill set to be able to actually successfully do the tasks that you're learning to do. But for more humanities, social science-based PhDs, it is definitely the case that you're being evaluated on how well you're thinking out your ideas and explaining them. So in that way, it should be a little less intimidating. So is graduate school hard? Well, I would still say yes and no. And I feel that anybody who had general success in undergrad, and yes, that even includes if you failed a class or two before, got C's, even D's, I don't think that'll make or break you or even determine if you'll be successful in graduate school. I know a ton of people who have flunked out of college, who flunked out of high school, who've been incarcerated, who've done all different types of things that would be considered non-academic types, that have been able to come back to school and succeed and become a doctor or get their graduate degree. So I firmly feel if you really want to get a graduate degree, you can do it. And in fact, I would say the hardest parts about graduate school are actually the non-academic parts, because the academic parts are the things that you can learn how to do. And it may take time and it may take a little bit of failure, but ultimately you can develop the skill sets to do the work. And I have a video coming out really soon where I'm going to discuss why is grad school hard and really unpack the academic, but also the non-academic things that make your graduate experience more difficult and the patterns that I've noticed. But I do think it's important to say that even if grad school is hard, all of the things that make it difficult, academic and non-academic, are 100% addressable, and there are strategies and resources that you can implement to be successful. So yeah, I would say grad school is hard, but grad school is hard like anything new in life. Just like your first day of undergrad where everything was new and different and you didn't know what to expect, graduate school is hard. But if you keep working at it, and if you ask for help and you do everything you can to prepare for it, you definitely can be successful. So if you're interested in learning more grad advice, exploring more grad life, and everything research, then don't forget to subscribe. And if there are any questions that I didn't answer that are burning up inside of you, please, please, please leave them down in the comments so I can make sure I address them in my future videos. And if this video helped you understand the difference between undergrad and grad school, then please leave a thumbs up so people know that this video has good content. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next week.